Thank you. To begin with, I'm Festus Robert, and I'm a graduate transport planner with Connect Consultants. I would like to begin with sharing the background to my research. So increasing use of private cars have been reported by several sources to be unsustainable and associated with several negative impacts on the environment and health. Since the Second World War, the number of licensed vehicles in the UK have increased year on year, with the exceptions of the periods where there were recessions and 2020 during the pandemic. Notably, during 2020, cars and taxis were over 150 billion miles higher than the next vehicle type, which is light commercial vehicles in terms of annual traffic by vehicle type. This has also been reported by several sources to be unsustainable. For example, the Department for Transport mentioned that car occupants accounted for majority of road casualties in 2022, with almost 30,000 people being killed or seriously injured. It is also the leading cause of death among children and young adults globally, and in the UK, the transport sector remained the greatest emitter of greenhouse gases, with 91% of the sector's domestic emission coming from road vehicles, of which the biggest contributors were cars and taxis. Over the years, transport researchers, practitioners, and policymakers have worked on ensuring or balancing the transport demand and capacity, for example, as this has severe consequences with direct impact, including traffic congestion rising and secondary impact. Secondary impact. Sorry, my screen is just rigid. Secondary impact include increase in pollutants and increase in obesity in children. On the other hand, when transport capacity exceeds demand, you have people tending to drive faster, and this also leads to potential traffic accidents with impacts including increase in local pollutants and obesity in adults and children as well. Despite long-term strategies and investment to enhance transport infrastructure, the demand for transport continues to surpass transport capacity, and structural reports on induced demand clearly prove that it is unsustainable to continue building more roads, and it has become less desirable over time as well. Induced demand simply means building more roads will lead to more demand on these roads. So what are travel plans then? Travel plans falls under an overarching term known as transport demand management, which are the use of strategies and policies that are targeted at private cars, and the aim is to reduce or redistribute demand for travel over time and space. They are governed by three pillars known as the behavioral change, network management, and capacity creation. This can also be broadly divided into the soft measures, also known as voluntary measures, which tend to look at behavioral change of travelers, and the hard measures, which is also known as FOX. First, because it includes things like using parking charges or dedicated lane to reduce the need for travel, or the need to use single-occupancy vehicles. This is also governed by 4 principles known as the 4 Rs, which is to reduce the use of private cars, to reroute journeys to less congested routes, to remote journeys from single or the use of cars to sustainable modes, including walking or public transport, and to retime these journeys to off-peak period or working from home or telecommuting. So travel plans are measures here to nudge and alter people's choice of travel by motivating and promoting or encouraging individuals to switch from private cars to active modes of travel, which include things like walking or cycling. And there are also long-term strategies for integrating sustainable travel into the planning process for proposals. I also wanted to share a brief timeline on its evolution. Travel plans are said to have originated in the 1970s and was mainly practiced in the US and Netherlands, and appeared in the US policy in 1974. It was primarily driven by the need to reduce congestion and enhance air quality, and in the UK it originated from the draft PPG 13, which is Planning Policy Guidance 13, which aimed to provide local planning authorities with guidance on providing or producing policies that aim to reduce the use of car use. Nottingham County was the first people to begin drafting their own travel plan, and was immediately followed by Birmingham, Bristol, and Cambridgeshire. By 1997, the Transport Minister launched a national guidance on workplace travel plan, and this ensured that government departments provided travel plan on their site. By 1998, about 3% of local planning authority already had travel plan, including Buckinghamshire, City of York, and Merseyside, and the new deal for transport government white paper provided significant support for travel plan. It was immediately followed by the transport bill, which provided legal framework for travel plan and included things like parking charges. The 1999 and 2002 budget also included incentives to nudge employers into providing travel plan, and by 2001, the reverse planning policy guidance also introduced travel planning to the land use planning law. This ensured that planning applications submitted which generate significant transport must be accompanied by travel plan. The DFT, Department for Transport, had continued also to promote initiatives and researches that aim to provide or encourage the use of travel plan throughout, and by 2004, the Smart Choices, DFT Smart Choices also provided evidence to show that travel plans were effective, and it became even a widespread adoption among local authorities. Are travel plan effective? Yes, they are, and there are several researches, not just in the UK, to prove that they have been effective in reducing the use for private cars, and they've been applied in lots of settings. But my research primarily focused on workplace travel plan, primarily focusing on SMEs. That's small and medium enterprise. So why the need of my research if they're effective? Well, reviewed past researches tend to focus on organizations with large staff numbers. Even the DFT Smart Choices focused on organizations with staff number. One of the researchers said none of these organizations they considered or they looked at would be considered as small or medium enterprise, including several other researches that have also, I think the least research that I saw looked at employment centers with up to 50 staff. I also compared theory to practice. I looked at extracted several travel plans from local planning authorities, and this an extract from one of those travel plans. And this for this site as well, the typical expected trip, the peak period, AM peak simply means the most busiest period in the morning, and it's 1 hour between 8 to 9. Expected vehicle trip rates were that's vehicles on the site were 88. The same for the evening peak, the most busiest period in the evening between 5 and 6 was 174, and then for Saturday was 250 during those peak periods or peak 1 hour. Looking at this across the day, in a typical day, expected trip numbers were over 2,000 on a typical weekday and over 2,000 on a typical Saturday. Now, looking at the travel plan for this site, it totally ignores these trips that have been attracted to the site by non-staff members, and it's totally focused on trips that were generated by staff members. For this site, typical staff number range from 5 to 15 on a typical day. And one thing with travel plan is that they are often represented, these staffs are often represented in percentage. This means that two staffs or more changing their individual mode of commute automatically switches this percentage to positively or negatively as well. I also looked at the population within 2-kilometer walk radius and 6-kilometer walk radius, again, which wasn't looked at with the travel plan on providing a kind of incentives to nudge these people into ensuring that they use active modes of travel or they travel sustainably. So in summary, we know the consequences of workplace travel plan. Sorry, my screen. So we know the consequences of workplace travel plan. We know that they weren't considering the local population. Can you see my screen, please?
No, I think it's dropped off, Festus.
Yeah. So sorry about that. So we know that it wasn't considering this local population that could easily be nudged into traveling sustainably, or for this is especially for SMEs, organization with very low staff numbers. We also know that it doesn't consider the number of staff that are being attracted to the site, but primarily focuses on the staff numbers as well. So I also looked at, so the next thing was the next thing. The next thing was obviously to bridge this. My research was hoping to bridge this gap by looking at several factors that could be used to tailor travel plans based on organizational type and typical associated staff number, looking at local population and even possible incentives, and also looking at net attracted trips as well. So the method for this is using the mixed method of research, which, so I'm not sure why my second screen keep going off and on. Yeah, using the mixed method of research, which aim to explore the qualitative and quantitative method of research, and qualitative explores behaviors of people visiting the sites, while quantitative looks at exploring already existing travel plans to explore their strengths and weaknesses as well, and then to tailor to produce an assessment tool that helps tailor travel plans based on these factors listed up here, which are organizational type, and then make a policy recommendation. Thanks. I'm happy to take questions. Sorry that my screen keeps fidgeting. I'm not sure why that's the
okay.
case.
That's okay. Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. So open to questions. Neil, I can see you're burning to ask a question. I think you're on mute as well. Neil, you're on mute.
Done it again.
There you go.
Festus, thank you for an engrossing presentation, Festus. It was absolutely loaded with information. I commend you for all your, I don't think there was a statistic that wasn't referenced in the whole presentation. Trying to just absorb the impact of all that. I've got two questions. One is that I don't know what the timescale was for your research, but to what extent has working from home, particularly after COVID, been represented in your research? And the other one is maybe a simpler one, is that I'm aware that travel plans have actually been used in some planning consents for major developments. You know, they've actually been a requirement, and I just wondered to what extent the developers and the occupiers of new properties have, you know, actually implemented these and what results they might have had. So hope those two questions are okay.
Yeah, I will start with the second one, which is in terms of the implementation of travel plans. There have been mixed reports from researchers. Some of them mentioned that enforcement have been a problem, that local authorities sometimes lack resources to enforce travel plans. Now, these reports are based on general travel plans and not just on workplace travel plans. In terms of workplace travel plans, especially for small organizations, there hasn't been so much report on it. Some of the researchers cited that poor data as of the time they were conducting their research was a reason for this, for them ignoring small organization with a small staff pool. So then your first question, please, can you repeat that again?
My first one was really was the impact, which is generally understood to have been significant as a result of COVID restrictions, and after that, the apparent high uptake was maintained in many places for working from home. I mean, is that reflected in the researches that you're telling us about today?
Yeah, I think initially the use of private cars during COVID, there was a dip in that as well. But I think from research and from the statistics I showed in page 1, this has gradually grown as well. Commuting in 2022 was accounted for 68% of travel by vehicle. So I think with time as well, there is also high number of people commuting by or using private vehicles for commuting as well. Whereas during COVID, that kind of dipped, but is gradually picking up again. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
James, Lauren, you got any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. Thank you, Festus, for the really interesting presentation. Just wondering what your views are on what the biggest obstacle to the success of travel plans are. What you found through your research.
So far, I think the biggest obstacle that have been referenced in researches have been, for example, enforcement of travel plan. I think their quality also varies according based on local authorities, whereas some local authorities tend to demand a very high quality travel plan. Some other local authorities tend to not do the same. So I think, and most of them often cite funding and resources for that, for the variation in quality. So there hasn't been any consistent approach.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, thank you, Festus. Yeah, like Neil said, a lot of information in there, which is great to see. Very well researched. It's clear you've gone into a lot of spent a lot of time researching the topic. My question is more to what could SMEs do potentially as a collective to help establish travel plans for those types of businesses?
Obviously, the main thing they have to do is to begin looking at not just focusing on their staffs, because from what has been from evidence from research, they've always focused on their staff, but their staff are not the main drivers of this high number of vehicles. So obviously there have been evidences from not just in the UK, where, for example, in the Netherlands, where they provide incentives for people visiting sites, or there are cases where they provide things like buggies for children visiting their site and as well. So I think there are evidences, not in the UK, but outside the UK, that they could obviously adopt to ensure that more people visiting the site begin to travel sustainably.
Thank you.
Okay, there's one last question, which has been put in the chat by Harry. So he said, thank you for the presentation and great to see that workplace travel plans are effective. It certainly seems like a challenge to influence customer visitor behaviour. What kind of incentives do you think could be explored first to affect customer/visitor behaviour?
In terms of incentives, I think there have been loads of there is a saying that there is no need to reinvent a wheel that is already existing. I think in the Netherlands, there are already practice of people using sustainable modes to visit SMEs. I think exploring this, there are things like vouchers or club cards, like those kind of incentives that people tend to respond to more. These are, and marketing research has also shown that people value added kind of bonuses in terms of visiting sites, or visiting not based on workplace, but based on the retail sector. So I think using that model to apply to workplace could nudge people into it. Could even mean things like when you travel sustainably, you scan something at Entrant that shows that you have a discount, or those kind of things tend to nudge people into traveling sustainably. Than yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.